I would be lying if I said that I have not thought about time travel and have deeply hypothetical discussions about how it would work. The concept of time travel is so intriguing that everyone wishes they could jump forward in time to see what their future looks like or go to the past to maybe feel a few things twice. Some people, however, don't just keep it to their thoughts. You see, everyone likes the idea of time travel, but some creative people take it to the next level and bring to real life what most only have in their thoughts. You guessed it. Today, we're going to be talking about the 12 best underrated time travel movies. So, jump in, guys. We're going on a ride. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Is that you are the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Predestination. In 1975, an agent tries to stop a bombing in NYC by a serial bomber named Fizzle Bomber, but fails. The bomb goes off, burning his face. But a mysterious man hands him this time travel device which he uses to go to his employer's facility in 1992 called the Temporal Bureau. His recovery involves surgeries that bring about changes in the way he speaks and looks. The doctor also diagnoses but never reveals that the agent is suffering from psychosis and depression, which is honestly a normal response to time traveling. Don't ask me how I know that. The agent is then sent on his final mission to 1970, where he meets a man named John. John then tells his life story to the agent. John was born intersex and raised female in a Cleveland orphanage. His name was Jane, and she fell in love with a man who impregnated her and disappeared. During the birth of the baby, due to complications, they changed her sex and performed a hysterectomy. Amidst this, her baby was mysteriously abducted. She despised her lover, chose John as a name, and relocated to NYC. There, the agent asked him to take over his job in exchange for taking revenge on her lover. They traveled to 1963. John realizes he fell in love with himself when he was Jane and made a child. John is then told by the agent that he must leave to complete the mission, while the agent discreetly travels to 1964, abducting the baby and bringing her to Cleveland in 1945. This meant that Jane, John, and the baby were all the same person. The agent has created a time travel paradox problem. Now we come to Fizzle Bomber. The Fizzle Bomber will strike again, killing over 11,000 people. Later, it is revealed that the Fizzle Bomber is the agent. His mind has been scrambled, and he thinks by bombing some people, he is saving countless lives in alternate futures. The agent, however, vows that his future will be different, so he shoots the Fizzle Bomber. As the film ends, a tape recording of a message left by the agent for John is played, in which he wonders if the future really can be changed.
Somewhere at the source code facility, you have a Captain Coulter Stevens waiting to send on a mission.
Source code. After Coulter Stevens, a U.S. Army pilot, wakes up on a train going to Chicago, he feels confused, as his last memory is of flying a mission in Afghanistan. However, his friend Christina Warren and all the reflections on any surface say he is a schoolteacher, Sean Fentress. As he expresses his confusion, the train explodes, and everyone on board dies. This happens about a half dozen times, with Stevens' only mission being to identify the bomber. It's later revealed by his employer, Captain Colleen Goodwin, that he died a couple of months ago, and he is missing most of his body. His brain is dead, with a very small part of his brain reliving the last 8 minutes of the passenger's memories. This is being done via an experimental method. Therefore, the only thing that matters is to find the bomber to prevent a second attack in Chicago. Eventually, due to a fallen wallet, Stevens identifies the bomber, who is a nihilistic domestic terrorist, Derek Frost. The bomber kills both Christina and Stevens, but as Steven comes back, he gives this information to Colleen, and it aids in the attacker getting arrested, and the second attack is prevented. Goodwin is congratulated, but he wants to die. However, Colleen backs off on her promise because Stevens is the only person who is able to access the source code, but then Colleen sympathizes with him and sends him back one last time, promising to unplug the life support. This time, he asks Christina out for a date, defuses the bomb, reports Frost to the police, calls his father, and reconciles with him under a guise. After 8 minutes, Goodwin terminates Stevens' life support, but his world doesn't end after 8 minutes, confirming that the source code isn't just a simulation, but a machine that allows him to create alternate timeline.
So your meter's jacked up. That's what I figured. So I tried 3 others. I got the exact
Primer. Abe and Aaron are 2 engineers. Their research one day makes them realize that they have created something. Abe explains to Aaron that he has already been time traveling. The way time travel works in this movie is that the machine, referred to as the box, has to be turned on at a given time for a person to go back to that time. So for example, the machine is turned on at 12 p.m. on Monday. Then it is left to run for 6 hours. Then you get into the machine at 3 p.m. and get back in time to when the machine started at 12 a.m. Having this knowledge, you can alternate the 6 hours. Abe and Aaron do this to do stock marketing, but eventually, time traveling back and forth for days constantly has hazardous effects on their health. There are multiple versions of them. Betrayal and deception are intertwined in this messy but brilliant tale. Their days become 36 hours long, including the time spent in the box, so they are physically exhausted and experiencing ear bleeds and fainting. In the end, Aaron is shown having created a huge version of the machine. The movie ends on an open-ended note as, due to traveling back and forth, Abe and Aaron have created paradoxes and multiple versions of themselves. This is a film that is absolutely mind-blowing and has a brilliant and realistic approach to time travel. Hey! Time crime. Living in the Spanish countryside, Hector, a middle-aged man, and his wife Clara live in a home that they are renovating. Looking through his binoculars to scan the forest, he sees a young woman who takes off her shirt and her breasts are exposed. When his wife goes shopping, he goes to the forest to investigate and finds that the woman he had seen is lying unconscious on the ground. He is stabbed by a mysterious man whose face is covered in bandages soaked in blood. He tries to flee and breaks into a mysterious nearby building. He then contacts a scientist using a walkie-talkie. The scientist guides Hector and tells him to come to his location, promising that he will be kept safe from the man with the bandages who is just outside. The scientist convinced Hector to hide in a large mechanical device. I think we can all learn that if a stranger asks us to get into a machine for safety, that probably isn't the best idea. Anyway, coming back to the topic, when Hector comes out of the machine, he learns that he has traveled back by 1 hour in time. The scientist proceeds to explain that the machine is an experimental time machine, and Hector is then referred to as Hector 2. The scientist reveals that Hector 2 should just stay where he is and let things unfold the way they did. But Hector finally realizes maybe he shouldn't be listening to a stranger. But he decides this at a weird time, because maybe you should have listened to someone who just sent you back in time, Hector. Anyway, Hector 2 drives off and sees the woman he had seen earlier, but he gets run off the road by a van. He uses the bandages on his arm wound to cover the cut on his head from the crash. Hector 2 is then approached by the woman to see if he is alright. He then makes her undress in the same spot to replicate the events that took place. When she runs away, Hector 2 chases her and accidentally knocks her out. He then lays her naked on the ground. When Hector 1 arrives, Hector 2 slashes his arm. The woman escapes. Hector 2 goes back to his home, where he hears a scream and chases a woman as she escapes to the roof. When Hector 2 tries to grab her, she slips and falls to her death. This makes Hector 2 think that he killed his wife, and it leaves him horrified. He then reaches out to the scientist over a walkie-talkie again and convinces him to lure Hector 1 to the lab, with warnings that he's being chased. He drives to the lab and tells the scientist he wants to go back in time once more, but the scientist warns him that there's a Hector 3 that has asked him to stop Hector 2 from going back in time. After removing the bandages, he asks the scientist to send him moments before Hector 2, which leads him to become Hector 3. Hector 3 runs Hector 2 off the road but crashes as well and knocks himself out. Hector 3 informs the scientist after waking up that he has failed to stop Hector 2. Hector 3 encounters the woman, and she screams because she is startled. Hector 3 and the woman flee to Hector's house as Hector 2 had heard her scream. They become separated. Hector 3 hides his wife and realizes what's about to happen. He finds the woman, cuts her ponytail off, gives her his wife's coat, and tells her to hide upstairs. Hector 2 chases her, and they reach the roof. Hector 3 sits on his lawn with his wife as Hector 2 inadvertently kills the woman, and then drives off. He heads back to the lab to become Hector 3 while we hear emergency vehicles approach in the distance. Safety, not guaranteed. Darius Britt, an intelligent yet disillusioned University of Washington graduate, lives with her widower father in Seattle and works as an intern at Seattle Magazine. When writer Jeff Schwinson proposes a story investigating a classified ad seeking a time travel partner, his boss Bridget approves. Jeff assembles a team, including Darius and fellow intern Arnau, a medical school hopeful. The team travels to Ocean View, Washington, where Jeff secretly plans to reconnect with an old love. Darius finds Kenneth Calloway, the ad's writer and a local stock clerk, but Jeff's initial approach drives Kenneth away. Jeff assigns Darius to connect with him, and her detached demeanor earns Kenneth's trust. As they engage in various training exercises, Darius grows close to Kenneth and shares her past, hoping to use time travel to prevent her mother's death. Kenneth, meanwhile, wants to go back to 2001 to save a former girlfriend, Belinda, whom he believes died in a car accident, while Jeff reconnects with his former flame, Liz, who ultimately rejects his offer to return to Seattle. He encourages Arnoud to embrace life by partying with young women. Bridget later calls Jeff to reveal that Belinda is actually alive and unharmed, prompting Darius to investigate further. She learns from Belinda that Kenneth's recollections are flawed. He wasn't her boyfriend and had mistakenly driven into her partner's house years ago. Kenneth then rationalizes that Belinda is alive because his travel mission succeeded when Darius confronts him. Jeff warns them that Kenneth is being followed by spies who are now here. Kenneth runs into the woods, followed by Darius. Kenneth and Darius board his time machine, which has been integrated into a small boat. Jeff, Arnoud, and the agents see Kenneth and Darius disappear as they activate the time machine. The Infinite Man, Dean, an inventor, plans a romantic weekend at a hotel to celebrate his anniversary with his girlfriend, Lana. The celebration is interrupted when Lana's ex, Terry, arrives unexpectedly, leading to a heated confrontation. Upset, Lana leaves, and Dean, devastated, decides to stay at the hotel, spending the next year building a time travel machine to fix their anniversary. On the following anniversary, Dean calls Lana, convincing her to return so he can make amends. The two use the machine and discover they've actually traveled back in time, but their intervention results in unintended consequences. Suddenly, multiple versions of Dean and Lana appear, each competing to change the timeline, creating a chaotic sequence where every attempt to correct things only worsens the situation. The hotel fills with overlapping timelines and versions of Dean and Lana, as well as Terry, each with partial knowledge of past events. Dean's obsession with control grows, leading to a breakdown where he even narrates Lana's line through an earpiece in an attempt to fix everything. Overwhelmed, Lana becomes disillusioned with Dean's inability to let go. Finally, Dean realizes his interventions are making things worse. In one last effort to restore order, he decides to destroy the machine. However, he's interrupted by a final confrontation with Lana, through which he recognizes his own insecurities as the root problem. Accepting this, he promises to improve himself. As Lana leaves, Dean glimpses a future version of himself reconciling with her in the distance. The Man from the Future. In 2011, Joao, Zero, a talented but bitter physicist, obsesses over a humiliating event 20 years prior, when his girlfriend Helena portrayed him at a college party. Now leading a major science project in Brazil, Joao's erratic behavior frustrates his sponsor, Sandra, though she still believes in his potential. With help from his friend Otavio, Joao activates an incomplete machine designed for energy production and financial success. As he thinks about that fateful night, the machine unexpectedly transports him back to 1991. Confused, Joao confirms the date and heads to the party, where he confronts his younger self, revealing that he has returned from the future to prevent the night's disaster. Joao warns his younger self that Helena's ex-boyfriend, Ricardo, will drug her, causing her to publicly humiliate Joao. This time, Joao intervenes, hoping to rewrite his past. When Joao wakes up in an altered 2011, he finds himself wealthy, but estranged from Helena, with a corrupt reputation. Determined to fix things, he reinstalls the time machine and travels back again, now disguised as a spaceman. After numerous chaotic encounters involving different versions of himself, Otavio, and Helena, Joao ultimately realizes the dangers of manipulating time. This happens only after he has been tied up, though. So to put it into perspective, there are at least 3 versions of Joao in the movie, if we don't count the younger version. In the end, Joao returns to 2011, destroys the machine, and leaves behind his pursuit of controlling his past. He reconciles with Helena, and Sandra, a friend from his past, has already invested in Google, as Joao once advised her, ensuring they're financially secure. Finally, Joao and Helena look forward to a fresh start, though Helena lightly teases him for cheating fate. The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. At Kuranos High School in Tokyo, 17-year-old Makoto Kano discovers a message on a blackboard and unknowingly activates a time travel device shaped like a walnut. Shortly after, she has a near-fatal accident on her bicycle, but suddenly finds herself transported back in time, avoiding the crash. Confused, Makoto shares this with her aunt, Kazuko, who helps her realize she now has the power to time leap. Excited by her ability, Makoto uses her time leaps for small conveniences, like avoiding tardiness, improving her grades, and reliving fun moments with friends. However, she soon realizes her actions have unintended negative consequences on those around her. She frivolously uses most of her time leaps, including one to dodge a love confession from her close friend, Chiaki. A numbered tattoo on her arm reveals her time leaps are limited, and she is down to her final one. Makoto tries to fix her mistakes, but when her friend Kasuke borrows her malfunctioning bike, she cannot prevent him and his girlfriend from riding into a train accident. At that moment, Chiaki freezes time and reveals he is from the future. He used his time travel device, the walnut-shaped object, to visit a painting that would be lost in his era. Now, out of leaps, Chiaki has sacrificed his last one to save Kasuke and must return to his own time. Makoto realizes she loves him but cannot stop him from disappearing. However, Chiaki's final leap restores Makoto's last leap, allowing her to go back and ensure the painting survives so Chiaki can see it in the future. Before he departs, Chiaki tells Makoto he'll be waiting for her in his time. Makoto then decides on her own future with the hope of meeting him again. Project Almanac. High school senior David Raskin is thrilled to be accepted into MIT, but realizes he can't afford the tuition when he learns his mom, Kathy, may have to sell her house. David enlists his sister Christina and friends Adam and Quinn to search through his late father Ben's belongings for anything that could help him win a scholarship. While searching, they find an old video recording from David's 7th birthday, showing his reflection as a teen. Following the reflection's clue, the group uncovers blueprints in the basement for a time machine his father was secretly working on for a DARPA project called Project Almanac. Using the plans, the friends build a working time machine, testing it on a toy car. When their experiment causes a neighborhood blackout, they realize the machine works but may be dangerous. They're soon joined by David's crush Jessie, whose car's fuel cell powers the device. The group agrees to use time travel for personal gain, but under one condition: they won't travel alone. They enjoy small changes to their lives until David tries to make his relationship with Jessie more serious by traveling solo, altering events and causing a series of tragic accidents, including a plane crash and a coma for Adam. David tries repeatedly to fix his mistakes, but each time things worsen. Jessie discovers his deception, and a feedback loop erases her from existence. In desperation, David returns to his 7th birthday, warning his father of the dangers of Project Almanac. To prevent future harm, David convinces Ben to destroy the blueprints and a key part of the machine, erasing David's timeline. In the new timeline, David discovers footage from the previous timeline. He approaches Jessie and tells her about the future, saying that they are about to change the world. Time after time. In 1893, in London, the famous writer H.G. Wells reveals his newly invented time machine to friends, including John Leslie Stevenson, a surgeon. However, their evening is disrupted when the police arrive searching for Jack the Ripper. When a bloody glove is found in Stevenson's bag, it's clear he is the killer. Stevenson escapes using Wells's time machine, but because he didn't take the non-return key, the machine returns to 1893, allowing Wells to follow him to 1979. Wells arrives in modern-day San Francisco, shocked to find a chaotic world instead of the utopian future he expected. After exchanging some British money for dollars and navigating a strange new costume, he tracks Stevenson to a hotel with the help of Amy Robbins, a bank employee. When Wells confronts him, Stevenson says that he is an amateur compared to modern criminals and not a freak anymore. Stevenson flees after a struggle, getting hit by a car and presumed dead. Meanwhile, Amy and Wells grow close, sparking a romance. But Stevenson isn't dead and soon terrorizes Amy, prompting Wells to prove his time travel story by taking her 3 days into the future. There, they discover a newspaper headline about Amy's murder by the San Francisco Ripper. Racing back to change events, they are unsuccessful, and Wells is briefly detained by police, leaving Amy vulnerable. Stevenson kidnaps Amy, demanding the non-return key to permanently escape in the time machine. Wells follows, ultimately removing a vital component from the machine, sending Stevenson to drift endlessly through time. Wells then decides to return to 1893 and destroy the time machine, deeming it too dangerous. Amy pleads to join him, and they depart together. The film finishes with the words on the screen: H.G. Wells married Amy Catherine Robbins, who died in 1927. As a writer, he anticipated socialism, global war, space travel, and women's liberation. He died in 1946.
I don't want you to.
Mega Time Squad. A small-time criminal who accidentally stumbles upon a mysterious Chinese bracelet while attempting a heist for his boss Shelton. The bracelet grants him the ability to time travel, letting him go back just a few moments to create alternate versions of himself, each with its own free will. John sees this as an opportunity to outwit Shelton and take the money for himself, believing he can use his time clones as a personal gain. However, each new version of himself complicates things further as the multiple Johns begin to argue and act independently. As the situation spirals out of control, Shelton and his gang chase John, while a supernatural curse tied to the bracelet looms, threatening his life if he continues using it. This movie is one of the movies that is not supposed to be taken seriously. Frequently asked questions about time travel. Ray gets fired from his job as a costume theme park guide. That night, he and his friends, Pete and Toby, go to a movie and then to a pub, where they draft a sarcastic letter to Hollywood on how to make better movies. At the pub, Ray meets Cassie, an American claiming to work for a future organization that fixes time leaks. Cassie warns Ray about editors who kill artists to stop their decline after creating masterpieces, and tells him he's destined to be famous. Ray thinks his friends set up the encounter to cheer him up. Honestly, Ray's thinking is valid, because this seems more plausible than someone who is from the future. Later, Pete sees a horrific vision of dead bodies, including a bearded version of himself, but the scene returns to normal. Cassie's talk of time leaks becomes more believable. The friends soon find themselves 30 minutes back in time, where Ray sees Cassie again and warns her about the time leak. Cassie disappears, then reappears moments later, claiming she spent 6 months fixing the issue. Thinking the problem is solved, they leave the pub, only to find it in a post-apocalyptic state. They flee back, only for Pete to return, looking traumatized. Their adventures lead them to meet Millie, another time traveler who claims Cassie sent her. Eventually, they realize Millie is an editor, sent to kill them to prevent future fame. After a chaotic confrontation, Millie seemingly kills everyone, but Ray accidentally destroys the famous paper, resetting time. Ray, Pete, and Toby wake up back at their pub table with memories of the night but no evidence. They decide to move on. In a twist, Cassie reappeared, revealing that destroying the paper caused massive time leaks. She urges them to join her to save the world. They all walk to the portal with them. Also, do not miss the mid-credits scenes in this movie. Marvelous verdict. Now, we have watched many people travel through time and tell so many different stories. And the only thing I learned from these movies is to not try to time travel under any circumstances. Well, not that I have access to a time machine, or do I? Guess you'll never know. This was all for today, folks. Drop your favorite movies in the comments below, and any other theories that you have related to the movies or time travel. For now, adios, amigos. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.